Are you looking for a sweater that can be accessories and garment in one? Are you looking for a Christmas inspiration for a really special person? And it really needs to be a special person for me to even think of gifting them a matching set of stockings and mittens. Okay, so if that's what you're looking for, I've got you covered, and with so much more. We're gonna have a look at the mittens and the sweater, but we're also gonna have a look at this beautiful cardigan that is screaming Dior's new look. We're gonna have a closer look at this American-inspired sportswear jacket, which is different than most of the patterns in this booklet. So let's grab a cup of something. I have a tea with me because I'm under the weather with a head cold, because it's the middle of the summer. What else would you do? And let's get right into these beautiful designs. We're starting with design number one, which just is so beautiful in my opinion. And it's this bubble jacket. And the only thing that seems standard to me is the sleeve. Other than that, this looks like really special construction. And I've read a lot of your questions regarding how to fit a yoke sweater, which can be really, really difficult because a yoke sweater is nothing else than creating a poncho and then adding sleeves basically. And the biggest problem is the apex of your bust and the space where you need the most movement for your arms are meeting at the same spot. And you need to give this enough room to have movement, but the space just above is so much smaller, so how to fit that is difficult, and this pattern does something really great to do that. You're having like a ribbing piece at your natural waist, so emphasize this hourglass look. So it's a shaping technique in the middle of your garment to cinch in your waist. Then you're increasing drastically. You're getting from like 25 centimeters, 24 centimeters at the waist to 32 at the bust. So you're really increasing rapidly. Then you're including the yoke piece, but what you're doing in the middle of the yoke piece, while you're also creating the bubbles, is increasing a strip of ribbing at the height of your chest. So you're taking this in, you're cinching this in at the point where you don't need as much space, while still giving it space at the bust point. I find that really genius. I haven't knit the garment yet, so I can't tell you how it fits, but this is definitely on my bucket list to knit. And the body is knit in a really tiny, like cable-y pattern. So you're having texture meet texture. So that I find really interesting. I don't know if it would be too loud or too much, like, you know, pattern mixing, but I give this a try. I'm just looking for the perfect yarn. Because because it has this high neck and this collar piece, so it needs something that is not itchy at all next to skin, but that has the structure of an animal fiber that I'm looking for. So no darts or anything, but yet tailored. Maybe a solution for all of you out there that want to knit a yoked garment but can't make it work for the body you have. Another garment that is using a yoked element is this beautiful cardigan. And even the description says it's inspired by Paris haute couture. So this is really like your new look go-to pattern. And this is looking kind of similar with the yoke piece, but constructed completely different. What they're doing here is they're knitting the main body and the yoke separately, and then they're seaming it together, giving you the advantage of having the tailoring options in your arm's eye, where, you know, the biggest problem of a yoked garment, and you still have a yoked piece, so you're not just interrupting a pattern. In this case, I don't think that was the most important thing, because it's a base texture pattern where you're knitting 2x2 ribbing, and after 4 rows you're switching purls and knit stitches. So you're knitting 2, purling 2, knitting 2, purling 2, and then you're going to meet those 2 knit stitches with 2 purl stitches, 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches, 2 knit stitches. So it's a really simple texture, really effective and beautiful. You're having a different texture at the peplum at the bottom, which is like tiny cables, and I just love the combination of the, you know, cables at certain spots and then plain texture, and it's also thought through and so tailored while still giving you all the advantages we would want from a yoked garment. I mean, you could just swap out the basic texture design for a color work you wanted to use and swap that in. You don't need to make it a jacket, you can make it a sweater, and then you can just knit the placket back and forth and seam it in. That just seems genius to me. And if I had all the time in the world, I would love to do both of these cardigans, but they're both pretty similar and what I imagine they would do in my wardrobe. So I have to think really hard which one to use. If you have a preference, let me know in the comments down below. What do you want me to knit? Because I will definitely do an in-depth video about the construction and the process and stuff. Moving on to the raglan sweater. This was like the first piece that caught my eye when I was flipping through this magazine, and one that I could not get out of my head, and I had to knit it. So this is the project I'm currently knitting on, and we're going to go into a little bit more depth here. Before we're moving on to the beautiful mittens and the tailored vest with a technique I don't understand, but we'll get to that. Focus, focus. So this sweater is rather simple in its construction. It doesn't look like it, but it's a raglan sweater, knit in pieces. I've never done that before. For my taste, it was too long. So this is the pattern I drafted, and I'll put that on screen so you can see it better. Basically, it does the same thing as the yoke sweater we looked at for the first time. It's giving you the hourglass shape by including ribbing at the waist, but you've knitted something before in stockinette stitch, and you have a folded hem at the bottom. And then you're knitting up to your waist, and then you have a really, really deep arm's eye. I usually knit my arm's eye to like 21 centimeters, and this is 30. I mean, granted, you're doing this little bit diagonal shaping of a raglan, but that still seems excessive. So I'm really excited to have a look at how that looks as a finished garment. But I've omitted the long peplum at the bottom because this is just not my style, and just started with the ribbing. I'm using this beautiful Merino Cashmere blend from Woolly Yarns, which is, I've knitted with both by hand and on the machine, and it just works up so beautifully. It has a really nice stitch definition. Also with the ribbing, it's just so nice next to skin, and yet it is really holding its shape nicely. But the eye catcher of this garment, because it's even promoting, you know, we're still post-war, we're not having reached the Wirtschaftswunder or anything, money is still kind of tight. So the advertisement for this sweater is, you have a sweater and you don't need accessories because you're knitting those accessories, like a collar that is also like a necklace, and the cuffs that are this beautiful cable detail that could go for bracelets. So what you're doing for the cuff, you're knitting that separately, and then you're picking up the stitches for the sleeves, and I find this a really, really beautiful detail, and I'm trying hard not to say really anymore. And once we're knitting the collar piece, we're folding this double, so you're getting even more volume, and that will be around the neck. That's just beautiful. The construction took me a while to figure out for my size, because it's not the typical measurements. I don't really know what 30 centimeters for an arm's eye would equal to in my size, so I just stick to that. It has a slight drop shoulder, so I didn't take in the shoulders, even though I usually do that. We will see how that turns out in a later video. I hope I'll still get this done in August. Moving on to the vest. And I mean, the vest, it's really beautiful. I'm not a vest person, but this just looks like chef's kiss. Basically, you can wear that on your own, but you can also wear that atop of a silk blouse. Who of us does not own a silk blouse just coming out of a war? And basically all the description, even in the pattern is drawn with the schematics, but all the text says or tells you is how to apply the ornaments. There's nothing said about the construction, and how do I do that? How do I get from this tip point to the sweater? I don't know. I am thinking of actually knitting this just because I'm so curious on how to construct, and sometimes I have a look at these things and I'm like, I don't know how that happens. And once you start knitting, you're kind of getting things to work, and I don't know if that's the way the designer knitted their piece up, but usually it works out in the end. So that is also really beautiful. I just wouldn't know how to style it in my wardrobe because I don't own a lot of silk blouses. Maybe that is my problem. Okay, so let's have a look at one last garment. And that is this beautiful American-inspired sportswear jacket. Or as it's described, you're looking very dressed in your warm costume jacket with 4 beautiful pockets that is inspired by American sportswear. The pattern also tells you to not put heavy things in those pockets or they might stretch. So I don't know, why do I have those pockets if I can't put anything in there? What would I put in there in the late 1940s? Maybe like a tissue or something? Or my lipstick? That would probably be okay. Again, just like our yoked garment at spot number 2, we're knitting this in pieces and seaming it together, so we're having a spot where we can put in our inseam pockets. So we need a seam, obviously. So you're gonna have a seam at the waistline for that pocket, and that is going diagonally up to your shoulder seam, and that is where you put in your other inseam pocket. This thing is the jersey pattern that is described here. It seems to be like a very standard thing, because I've seen that in other magazines and they didn't even explain how to knit this. We have a little explanation here. So the jersey pattern means we're knitting this in stranded color work, and we're switching up a dark and a bright color every other stitch. And then we're switching that up every row. So we have bright, dark, and then we have dark, bright, dark, bright. It's not my cup of tea. It's, you know, you're adding shoulder pads and it just seems really, really different. But it's a beautiful construction with the pockets. And it includes darts at the back. So in the middle of your garment, you're having these darts at the back for a tailored look. Even though we're a little bit more oversized, it's still tailored. I'm curious to see how that turns out, but not curious enough to knit a full-length jacket. So last pattern is this beautiful set of mittens and stockings. Imagine like wearing your 1940s outfit and it's really cold outside and you have your stockings on, and then you put on your gloves and they just match. That just looks so high fashion to me, so well dressed. I don't know if I would have it in me to knit like knee-high stockings on 2mm needles and gloves with a design and color work. That just seems like a lot, and this apparently is a gift for a special someone. That really needs to be a special someone. If I'm even thinking about knitting them knee-high stockings and mittens on tiny needles for one occasion. Like, what? But beautiful, like really, really beautiful. Didn't work, did it, with less really? So if you have quite a bit of time on your hands and a really special someone in your life, what about starting Christmas knitting in August? And you will probably need those 4 months to achieve those stockings and mittens. So let me know if you would try any of these patterns. As I'm showing you a lot of these patterns, you can't really get your hands on them because they're just in my magazine. So I'm thinking of making them available to you somehow. I just haven't wrapped my head around it because there's a lot of copyright issues, because I can't just share the pattern with you. And I would love to give you a little bit of additional information on how to grade it to your size. So to make it size inclusive, but I don't want to give you a standard pattern with telling you to knit for this bust or this, because that is not what this channel is about. It's about creating garments that actually fit your body rather than standard patterns. So if that is something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments down below as well. I'm trying to figure things out. So I'm going to leave you with this video as inspiration for 2 weeks, because I'm going on vacation tomorrow with my little kids. If you're missing me because there's no video next week, there's a lot of backlog over on the channel with older videos that are more podcast style, but that might be your cup of tea as well. And I'm thinking of bringing that format back because I miss it. And I know a lot of creators talk about the podcast being dead, and I'm not looking as many anymore, but I really want to find a way to make it interesting and special, and yet just be a talk format where we can have conversations about what we're currently knitting, what we're enjoying, and what is bugging us about it. So that is something I'll be thinking about even though I'm on vacation. So happy knitting, everyone, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye!